Well, we reached the month of November, and some of the headlines are saying the mortgage rates are at the lowest point they've been in a year. We'll find out if that's actually true, what Bill's watching, and where we're headed at the end of the year before we turn the page to 2026. Welcome into the Smart Mortgage Show. Ben George with Bill Litton at Cross Country Mortgage. Glad to have you with us on another video, another market update. We do this every single month to kind of give you the perspective of a mortgage lender, what he's watching, what's on his mind, and kind of what he's seeing in terms of mortgage rates and the market and home buying and all the sorts. So as always, we do that with Bill Litton at Cross Country Mortgage. Bill, how you doing as we enter November here, the final stretch of the year?
Yeah, doing good. Staying busy. We've been pretty fortunate that we've stayed, a little bit better than steady. We're now doing more with refinancing as rates are coming down. Certainly our main focus is always helping people to purchase homes, but we do help with both. And, we are seeing interest rates creep down a little bit.
Yeah, I think I'll start with that because I've seen some headlines. I was looking before we recorded that rates are kind of close to the lowest point they've been in a year. Now, I think you see that and you get excited, but kind of what's the reality behind where we are with rates? Are they dropping? Are we in a really good spot? Kind of what do we need to know if we're in the market right now?
Well, I think the good news is rates have come down since early August. And since rates went up in 2022, and they went up, 5% in 1 year, which is a major increase, we've touched the lower 6% interest rate for a very short period of time. But now, since they came down in August of this year, rates have kind of found themselves in a new range that's sub 6.5%. And we feel like that's a really good sign. Everybody asks, when are we going to 5.5%? And it's very hard to answer that question. In fact, I don't know that anybody can really answer it, but what does seem to be emerging is a newer range from the 7% range to the low sixes.
Which is good news, right? I mean, I think that for people that have been waiting, obviously any decrease is a welcome news for them. But have you seen kind of any interest, or have you seen, more people come through the door or call or reach out because of the rates? Have you seen it make any difference?
We have, yeah. A lot of people hear things on the news or they read it online. There's various sources where this information comes from. So they're hearing it and then they're reaching out to us. Now, there's always hey, this is the lowest rate in X amount of time. And I think that really gets people hopeful. And sometimes it really doesn't equate to as low. There's some clickbait out there. So the reality of things is rates are on their way down. If your rate was 7.5% and you reached out to us, it's time to refinance, even if you're closer to 7, depending on the loan type. But there's a lot of people that are still in a holding pattern for the refinance because rates just aren't low enough yet.
Yeah, so it's kind of benefited maybe home buyers more than refinancers. I'm sure that conversation comes up quite a bit, and we've talked about it here on this channel. So you can go back to and look at some of the videos we talked about refinancing and kind of what to consider and how far that rate needs to move for you to actually sit down and actually move forward with that. But it's something Cross Country can help you with. If you have questions, want to maybe run the numbers and see if it makes sense mathematically to do that, because that's ultimately what that should come down to on that decision. But so rates are kind of in a good spot. Bill, what else currently here in the month of November has your attention?
Well, two good things. So the Fed's measure of inflation came out today lower than expectations. So that's very positive. And also, Chairman Powell recently mentioned the idea of, so what the Fed has done since 2022 is if somebody pays off a mortgage, a mortgage is a bond, right? A bond is a loan. So if somebody pays off their mortgage, the Fed had they were supporting the mortgage market. So they were buying up these bonds, which that's what made rates really low. Well, as people paid off those bonds, the Fed just let them run off the balance sheet. They didn't replace it with a new mortgage. Well, the Fed's position has changed over the last 3 years. So they've let a lot of those loans run off the balance sheet, which means now they feel like they could actually start to, backfill the loans that are running off the balance sheet with new loans, which will maintain the same position of the amount of those assets that are on the Fed's balance sheet. And really, like, let's boil it down to what's important is that could help interest rates come lower. That Fed support and that change in monetary policy could absolutely help interest rates to get a little bit lower. Because everybody, as we lower the federal funds rate, everybody is keyed in on that. I think because it gets a lot of press, does not equate to what a 30-year fixed rate mortgage is going to adjust to. Now, there's correlation, but there's no causation. This Fed runoff could have a more substantial benefit. So inflation continuing to come down and stay in the adequate range, as well as the Fed, not allowing those bonds to run off the balance sheet, could be really good news for 30-year fixed rate mortgages or 20-year or 15-year.
When you say good news, does that mean good news? And I know you can't predict the future, Bill, but just generally speaking, does that mean good news next month? Does that mean good news in 6 months, a year? What does that typically mean?
Well, it's hard to say because the Fed has not committed to that strategy yet, nor have they mentioned any kind of date at which time they would stop the runoff. So we don't know the answer to that. And also, you've got other extenuating circumstances that could certainly change direction on that. So it's really hard to say. If I had to guess, I would say if we stay on the same path and there's no new variables that we've not considered, or if there are new variables, they are minor and they're not, macroeconomic events of large proportion that would change the direction here. I would say in 2026, we could be in the 5% range, probably upper fives, but it's really nice to have a 5 in front of that mortgage rate. And I think a lot of people want to see that. And I think that'll help people to sell their current house and buy a new home, which will open up a lot of inventory.
All right. And, now we are early November and still have a little bit of time before the end of the year, but is there anything that matters in the mortgage industry in terms of when the year ends that as a home buyer, maybe you need to know about or be more aware of now versus another portion of the year? Or do things operate pretty standard year round?
Well, I would say from a specific to mortgage standpoint, I don't think that there's a consistent year over year seasonality that presents itself during this time of year. There have been this time of year where rates plummeted. It's been this time of year where rates have increased. So I don't see this time of year being anything. Now, when you talk about the home part of it and the negotiation part of it, the market slows down a bit. So if you need a seller assist, that could be more possible this time of year. Or if you're trying to put your home on the market and you need to sell it quick, it could be harder to do this time of year. You might get top dollar for your home in spring market. So there are some considerations, whether you're a buyer or a seller, on how the negotiations for the house could pan out. From the mortgage standpoint specifically, though, there's no exact playbook on this time of year.
All right, perfect. Well, again, some things we're watching here in November. We'll have more in December in the coming months as well. If you ever have any specific questions for Bill at Cross Country Mortgage, please reach out. You can get in touch. Everything's in the show description, but the easiest way to connect with Bill is just text the word LEND, L-E-N-D, to 21,000 to begin that conversation. And, whether you're in the market now, thinking about it down the road, or just have any refinancing questions, any of these things can be covered by reaching out to Bill. Again, text the word LEND to 21,000. But we hope your month's off to a good start. I know a lot's coming up over the next few weeks, Bill. I know it'll be busy both in the office and away from the office. So thanks for the time.
Thank you so much. We always appreciate it. And as Ben has said, reach out with any questions. We're always here to answer them. Thank you.
This program is for informational purposes only. Please consult a qualified professional before taking any action. Bill Litton is a loan advisor and regional president with Cross Country Mortgage, NMLS number 147060.